In today's world of social media, mobile phone tracking, and constant surveillance footage, it seems bizarre that somebody can just disappear, never to be seen again. It's even more strange when that person is a celebrity. From politicians to authors to sports stars, there have been dozens of celebrity disappearances in the last few decades. Join us for today's episode as we examine 3 such cases of famous people who mysteriously disappeared. Joe Pichler. Born on Valentine's Day, 1987, in Bremerton, Washington, Joseph David Wolfgang Pichler began his acting career when he was just 4 years old. One of 5 children, he managed to get cast in a string of TV commercials as a child, with his family moving to LA to help him pursue his dream. In 1996, at the age of 9, he played a small role in the thriller film The Fan with Robert De Niro and Wesley Snipes, before eventually getting a part in the 1999 movie Varsity Blues, one of his most well-known roles. Things only got better for Joe in 2000, when he was cast as one of the main characters in the movies Beethoven's Third and Beethoven's Fourth, both family comedy films following the antics of a St. Bernard dog. Around this time, Joe told the media, "I've said no to sex and drugs. I don't want to get typecast. I'd much rather do movies. I like the whole atmosphere of changing characters and meeting new people." In 2002, Joe made his last 2 appearances on screen. He starred in 2 episodes of The Nightmare Room, a children's anthology horror series, and the movie Children on Their Birthdays, an independent comedy drama. In 2003, his mother, Kathy, decided that Joe needed a break from Hollywood. She was concerned that he would burn out and wanted him to be able to complete his education, stating, "I just wanted him to have some normalcy in his life. He's a good boy and took it well, but he wasn't really happy about it." During his acting hiatus, Joe returned to his hometown where he finished high school, moved into his own apartment, and took a full-time position as a telephone technician at Teletech. He still dreamt of pursuing acting though, telling his family that once his braces were removed, he would return to Hollywood. Tragically, Joe disappeared before he was able to do so. Joe was last seen on February 5th, 2006. He met with friends earlier that day, who noted that he was in good spirits, but at around 4:15 a.m., he called a friend from his mobile phone. The friend described 18-year-old Joe as sobbing and being inconsolable. He ended the call by saying he would ring back in an hour, but he never did. Nobody heard from Joe again after this point. 4 days later, his silver Toyota Corolla was discovered. It had been abandoned half a mile from Port Washington Narrows, a large body of water. There was a note and poems left behind in the vehicle, where Joe expressed his desire to be a stronger brother for his siblings. He also stated that he wanted his younger brother, Matthew, to have some of his belongings. Investigators strongly believe that the note left behind indicated Joe had taken his own life. However, his family disagreed, noting that he was not depressed at the time of his disappearance. Though some reports observe that he was recreationally engaging in drugs and alcohol when he went missing, he was not known to have any issues related to either substance. His sister, Shauna, told Kitsap's son, "He's probably too embarrassed to come home. In the worst case scenario, if anything, it's foul play, but not suicide." One brother added, "He left that note saying he wanted to start over." His mother also stated that Joe had left the door to his apartment unlocked and the lights on, which was unusual. She also alleged that someone had broken into his home, claiming that some of her son's most valuable Magic the Gathering cards had been taken. Kathy would later claim that the police investigated no other avenues, staunch in their belief that Joe had taken his own life. She said one police detective told her, "I don't know how to say this to you without sounding really bad, but basically I think your son's dead, and it could take months for him to show up in the water." Despite mass searches for any sign of Joe or his body, he has never been found. His wallet and car keys were missing from the scene where his vehicle was located. 18-year-old Joe Pichler was last seen on January 5, 2006 in Bremerton, Washington. He is described as a white male with light brown hair and green or hazel eyes. He still had braces on his upper teeth, but his lower set had been removed at the time. He is 6'2" and weighed 170 pounds when he was last seen. Joe also had a Star Wars Rebel Alliance logo tattoo on his right forearm and a small scar across the bridge of his nose. When Joe was last seen, he was possibly wearing a brown t-shirt and jeans, and a white metal watch on his left wrist. He may have been depressed at the time of his disappearance, and he normally carries an inhaler for his allergies, but did not have it with him at the time of his disappearance. He is allergic to dust mites, cats, dogs, and birds, among many other things. He uses the nicknames Joe and Josie. If Joe is still alive, he will be 37 years old. If you have any information about his case, you can contact the Bremerton Police Department at 360-473-5228. Harold Holt. In 1966, Harold Holt became Australia's 17th Prime Minister. A politician and lawyer, he entered Parliament at the age of 27 and became a government minister at the age of 31. By all accounts, Harold was a keen outdoorsman. He had homes in numerous coastal towns, including Portsea, Victoria, and Bingle Bay, Queensland. He practiced spearfishing and enjoyed skin diving and snorkeling, noting that he found air tanks to be burdensome. His friends described Harold as having incredible powers of endurance underwater, and he reportedly would see how long he could hold his breath during parliamentary debates, just for his own entertainment. While he was able to tread water for long periods of time, he was reportedly not a strong surface swimmer. He had been repeatedly warned by friends and colleagues about the dangers of his hobby. Concern for him increased on May 20th, 1967, when he had a close call while diving at a beach near Point Nepean in Victoria. During a swim, he became distressed and called for help. He was fortunately rescued by his diving companions, and though he remained conscious, he reportedly turned purple and vomited seawater. Harold later claimed that a leaking snorkel was responsible for the event. Though Harold was in good health at the time of his disappearance, it has been observed that he had a family history of premature death. His father died age 59 and his brother age 57. In September 1967, just a few months before he went missing, Harold began receiving treatment for a shoulder injury which dated back to his youth. He had injured himself in a sporting match as a young man, and the injury had recently become painful again. He was subsequently prescribed painkillers and twice-weekly physiotherapy. His doctor advised him to cut back on swimming and tennis to avoid overexerting himself. On Sunday, December 17th, 1967, at around 11:15 a.m., Harold and 4 friends set out for Point Nepean. They hoped to catch a glimpse of solo circumnavigator Alec Rose, who was supposed to pass through the rip into Port Phillip Bay. The yacht, however, wasn't very visible, so between that and the extreme heat, the group didn't stay long. While driving back to Portsea, Harold suggested they stop off at a local beach for a swim so they could cool off. By all accounts, he knew the beach well and had been there on numerous different occasions. Despite the water looking rather turbulent, the group stopped by the beach and Harold headed into the water. Alan Stewart, one of his companions, headed in with him. The other 3 members of the group stayed on land as the water looked rough. Alan recalled staying close to the shore and noticing a strong undertow. Harold, meanwhile, ventured in further. He was eventually caught up in the current and dragged out to sea. He did not call for help or indicate that he was distressed, but moments later, he was gone from sight. Following the incident, the police were contacted and the Australian Defence Force was put on high alert. The search for Harold began at 1:30 p.m, but amateur divers found the water to be too rough for exploration. Helicopters, watercraft, naval diving teams, and police divers all aided in the search for Harold, but again, the difficult conditions and limited available equipment meant that no one was able to make much progress. Rescuers that day described the sea as being heavy, rolling, and noted that the waves were 6 to 8 feet high, even as the tide receded. Things didn't improve in the evening, with the rough conditions being likened to being inside a washing machine. A second search was launched just before 5 a.m. the following morning, despite poor weather conditions, including torrential rain driven by a howling gale, but was suspended after a change in tide at around 8 a.m. Another hunt the following day was hampered once more by bad weather. Ultimately, efforts to recover Harold's body were called off on January 5, 1986. Up to 300 people were involved in the search at its peak, and no trace of the Prime Minister was found. The only thing remaining of him was the small pile of clothes he had left behind on the beach. A member of one of the naval diving teams noted, any chance of finding the Prime Minister was lost by Sunday night. Following Harold's disappearance, numerous theories emerged about what may have happened to him. Most people agree that he was lost at sea, but there is much debate about what exactly occurred. Some speculated that he simply underestimated the harshness of the conditions and became exhausted trying to keep afloat. Others theorized he suffered a heart attack. Other suggestions included that he was stung by jellyfish, attacked by a shark, or struck by driftwood. His body most likely was washed out to sea, though senior pathologist James McNamara at the time suggested to officials that his body had been trapped by kelp and eaten by sea creatures. If this is what happened to Harold, then the body would have been reduced to a skeleton in a period as short as 24 to 48 hours. There are other theories regarding Harold's disappearance. It is perhaps not unexpected that the vanishing of a politician would lead to conspiracy theories. Some believe that his death involved some sort of cover-up at the highest level of government. In 1968, the Sunday Observer published a story that claimed Harold had been killed by the CIA because he planned to pull Australian troops out of Vietnam. Similarly, there were theories that he was killed by the North Vietnamese. Over 10 years after his death, in 1983, journalist Anthony Gray claimed that Harold had been a lifelong spy for the People's Republic of China, alleging that the Prime Minister faked his death to defect back to China. Other theories included that Harold took his own life or faked his death to be with a lover. Both of these theories have been rejected by his family members, as well as colleagues and friends, as has the notion that Harold was a Chinese spy. Rico Harris. Born May 19, 1977, in Los Angeles, California, Rico Harris was the oldest of 4 children. His father, Henry Harris, was a former star forward for Idaho State who had been playing semi-professionally in LA, and it wasn't long before Rico began showing his own impressive athletic abilities. During Rico's teen years and early 20s, he became known for his NBA-level potential. He attended Temple City High School at the age of 17, where he is credited with turning around the school's basketball team, putting them on the map, and drawing in university scouts. The Press-Telegram, a newspaper published in Long Beach, noted that he was one of the best high school players in the western United States during the 1994 to 1995 season. Rico's university career, though, wasn't so successful. He bounced between universities for various reasons. He failed a specific class, making him ineligible to attend one school. He was arrested on charge of unlawful imprisonment at one point, and he eventually began drinking and partying. Los Angeles City College teammates, though, noted that his skill in the game was never affected, with one noting he probably didn't get no sleep and was up all night. Then he dropped like 35 points that game. Still, he'd later be described as a disruptive influence, and he was, at one point, suspended for 6 games. Rico continued to drink. He became socially isolated, and his long-term girlfriend left him. Though recruiters continued to approach him, he didn't respond. He believed they were only interested in his basketball skills and not his personal development. In the spring of 2000, he joined the Harlem Globetrotters, which seemed to be a perfect fit for him. However, just a month into his career, he got into a fight while out in LA and was struck on the back of the head with a baseball bat. Though he managed to escape the scene, intense headaches and balance issues arose as a result of the assault. He left the Globetrotters at the age of 24. Over the next few years, Rico would deal with alcohol and drug abuse issues, which would lead him to be arrested over 100 times, mostly for public intoxication. In 2007, at the age of 30, he finally began to get things together after an overdose led him to be sent to a rehab facility. Upon his release, he attempted to live a normal life, securing housing, picking up a job as a security guard, and eventually meeting Jennifer Song. The two began dating shortly afterwards. By September of 2014, the pair were discussing marriage. Rico eventually left California to be with Jennifer in Seattle. Here, Rico managed to get a job interview as a property appraiser and exchanged his California driver's license for a Washington one. Though he and Jennifer struggled to adjust from being a long-distance couple to living together, Rico was looking to make it work. He wanted to have a fresh start in Seattle. On October 8th, he drove from Seattle to Alhambra to speak with his mother and collect some clothes. His girlfriend, Jennifer, would later tell the media that she believed Rico had also gone to visit his mother for some closure regarding things in the past. Quote, "I think he realized some things and wanted to talk to his mother. He wanted her to trust him and trust us and believe in our relationship." His mother, Margaret, would later state that she didn't believe Rico got what he wanted from the conversation. Shortly after midnight, Rico began the journey back to Seattle. Records show that after leaving Alhambra, he drove north on Interstate 5. He then stopped 40 miles south of Sacramento to get petrol. He called Jennifer at 10:45 a.m. on October 10th, leaving a message which said he was going up into the mountains to rest, as he hadn't slept much after leaving Seattle. At 11:15 a.m., the phone was turned off. On October 13th, 2014, a deputy for the Yolo County Sheriff's Office found a Nissan in the parking lot at the Cache Creek Regional Park. He thought nothing of it until the following day, when he noticed the vehicle was still there. When he checked the registration, he learned that the Nissan belonged to Rico Harris, who had been missing since October 10th. The car's gas tank was empty, and its battery was dead. The inside looked as if it had been ransacked. A short time later, his mobile phone was found in the park. The battery was dead, but the device was undamaged. A black backpack was propped up against the guardrail nearby. It contained a few jumper cables and some clothing and 2 bottles filled with alcohol and an energy drink. Once the phone was charged, investigators recovered a video Rico appeared to have filmed of himself unintentionally, sitting in his car at the park, looking through paperwork from his glove box and carelessly tossing it into the back seat as music blasted from his speakers. The video was from the night of October 10th. Around October 18th, tracks were discovered in the sand by Cache Creek. They had not been there the previous day, and though a cast could not be made of them, they seemed big enough to match Rico's large shoe size. That same day, a tall, broad individual walking along State Route 16 was noted by a passing driver. Other sightings of a similar figure were reported this same week, but none have ever been confirmed as being Rico. Rico Harris has never been heard from again since his disappearance. Investigators on the case do not believe that he met with foul play, but that he willingly came to the park. There were no signs of a struggle around the vehicle, and his backpack and phone bear no marks that they were taken by force. They believe Rico left his phone to avoid being tracked or accidentally forgot the device along with his backpack. Authorities theorize that he may have taken a wrong turn after getting petrol and wound up in the park, where he decided to stop so he could take a nap. They have suggested that when he woke up, he decided not to return to Seattle yet, and instead wandered around in the wilderness. By the time he came back to his car, it was gone, because it had been towed by investigators. They theorized that he then hitched a ride to another town. The LA Times spoke with Rico's stepfather, who recalled his last conversation with the 37-year-old, where he expressed doubts about whether or not moving to Seattle was the right decision. When his stepfather asked why he was doing it, he responded, "I'm ashamed of the things that happened down here, and I want to start another life." Investigators added that in the footage of Rico in his car, he seemed like a free man. His mother, Margaret, stated, "He could be alive. Maybe he's not. I don't know what the truth is. I don't know. People don't just vanish." She added, "Something sinister is lurking in that part of California. Rico, you are not forgotten, ever. I am not giving up on finding my son. 37-year-old Rico Harris has been missing since October 10th, 2014. He is described as an African-American male with short dark hair and brown eyes. He is 6'9" and weighed 280 pounds at the time of his disappearance. If you have information on Rico's disappearance, you can call the Yolo County Tip Hotline at 530-668-5248. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.